Hello and welcome back to Polytoots. It's been a while, maybe 2 weeks or so since my last upload. I do try to aim for weekly uploads, but work is often a little too busy. Plus, I squeezed in a little holiday, so nice. I want to thank I'm not sure how to say his name, Wari Libra. I don't know. I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong. He requested a sort of teleportation shader and it looked cool, so I thought I would give it a whirl. I do apologize to this dude specifically. I haven't yet been able to work out the like the square thing. You'll know what I'm talking about. Nobody else knows what I'm talking about. I'll just carry on. So we're going to be building one shader that will do a bunch of stuff, really. For this one on the end, we're just going to be changing a certain set of nodes, but essentially what this allows you to do is create this teleportation effect where it kind of comes from either the top down and then kind of fades away, or we can actually just reverse this effect. So it comes from the bottom up. It's pretty cool. It has offsets. It gets a little crazy like that. I haven't looked too much into doing this specifically on the Y because for what I was after, a low offset seemed to work the best. And you can also control the speed. I find a high speed tends to work quite nice. You might like it on a smaller speed, something like this. I prefer the high speed because it just makes it feel like it's, you know, holographic and jittery. So a slightly different version of this one is where we have it coming from both the top and the bottom, something like that, and then it's gone. It comes back, and again we can reverse this effect because it's the exact same shader. We just added a parameter, and then lastly this one, which is just using a different kind of noise, but it's essentially the same thing. This also has the reverse, but the way that this is handled now is through an actual slider. So it's the down to the up. You can create lots of different effects just from these kind of things. You can kind of go and adjust the thickness of these lines. You can have them like really thin, which creates like a really nice holographic look. Then we can also increase the tiling of these, which I've called the noise scale. So we can increase that or decrease that depending on what you want to do. And again, with the sort of offset strength, you can do some pretty crazy stuff. So if I take that speed up to something crazy, let's put in a bit more tiling. Maybe that's a little too crazy with the offset, but you get the idea. So we're going to be doing this. We're going to start it right now. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is create a new Amplify shader. I don't know if I mentioned that we were going to be using Amplify shader editor, but it's in the title of the video probably, unless I forgot. And the only thing we need to do here is change the blend mode to transparent, and I believe that's it. Let's do this, try and give ourselves a bit more space, and from this we'll just create a new material as well. Oh, and of course if you want, you can stick the shader wherever. I'll just do polytoots / teletoot, and now I'll assign this. So polytoots, teletoot, and I might as well select these two, and I will put my material on this guy, so we're actually using it. So the first thing that we're going to do is set up the type of noise that we want. So on the other ones, maybe I should keep them here as an example. The noise is, in this one, it's essentially all of this red stuff, it's colored red. And for the other one, it was this. So, you know, this isn't necessarily noise per se, but it's essentially the sort of emissive mask type of effect that we will be using. So that's what we're going to start with. And the idea is you kind of just cover the entire character with it, and then you sort out the rest later. So we'll begin with this, and we'll start with texture coordinates. I've completely forgotten how to do this. Oh, it's with the U key or space, and just try and find it. Texture coordinates somewhere. Yep, with the U key. If you didn't know, if you're searching for something and you see this little letter next to it, it means that that's the hotkey for bringing it in. So if you just hold U, click, done. So anyway, yeah, sorry. We're going to be doing the a noise generator. I believe ShaderForge doesn't have this, but most people, they will just run like an actual sort of noised texture through this kind of thing, and it's you know, it's pretty much the same thing. So I wouldn't worry if you don't have a noise generator. You can just use a random noise texture. So long as it tiles, you'll be alright. And speaking of tiling, we do want to put something into that, and you can, if you wanted to, just use a single float. Just by holding the one key and pressing in the number one key, and put that into tiling, and then any number in here will it will output your tiling amount. But we're going to be using a vector 2 for this, and I'll show you why later. So we're just going to hook the XY into that, and for now we'll just leave it on, say, 5 and 5. And of course we need a panner node. It's the magical node that almost every shader uses just to scroll our texture. So we're going to get a time node so that this actually animates over time. Then we'll have a value which will be our speed. And this will be a public property because we will access it. So we're going to adjust the time here. Let's put a default of 1. And let's hook this into time. And then stick that into the offset. And at the moment it's not doing anything because we haven't set a direction. And you can, if you want, plug in some floats or vector 2s to control this on the material itself. But I will just do this because I only want it to go this way. We might reverse it, but for now this is fine. So there's our initial kind of effect, and if we stick that into, say, emission and apply, we get something like this. And teleportation, so we can increase our speed. I didn't set my tiling, unfortunately, to a property, so sorry. Public property, let's try that again. Okay, so now we have a vector 2. I mean, it displays as, I suppose, a vector 4, but it's only using these two, and so we can do, you know, 55 by 55. It doesn't want to do 55. There we go. Yeah, so you kind of get the idea. It's already kind of similar to what's happening here. So I'll put that one back on. We'll say though, I don't want this particular thing. I mean, for you, this could be fine, and you could move straight on to the next step, but I don't want the black to be black, basically. I kind of want the whites to be super white and the blacks to be gray. And the easiest way to do that is basically just to add this by itself. So we will add in an add, and we'll just give this value. This won't be a public property. I mean, you can make it public if you want, but I don't see the need. Let's call it booster or something, because essentially all we're going to do is just add this by itself, and now it's you know, it's a lot more boosted. And before I start going all crazy with the nodes and stuff, if anyone watched my previous tutorials on the burning shader, I was having some troubles with the get and set from ShaderForge, and Amplify did reach out to me and they told me how to do it, which is just with the register local variable and a get local variable. So it's R to put down the register, and then G to put down the get, and then we'll set this one as just noise, and then over here we can just grab it and boom, which is really nice. I like that kind of stuff. Let's apply this and see what it looks like. Okay, yeah, it's got some oomph to it. Pump up the speed. Everything is fine and dandy. And I'm just going to highlight everything and press the C key. So add a comment, and I'm just going to call this noise as the title. Comment could be nothing, unless you're handing it off to someone and it kind of needs explanation, but for me, this will do. I'll just put this a little bit out of the way. So the next thing that we're going to look at is the controlling the sort of the slice gradient. So if we look at one of my other ones again, and select the material. So the actual, let's just bring this down to make it a little bit easier to see. The actual gradient that will travel either up or down our character's body. So we're going to be making that next. And we're going to start with a vertex position. You could use world position, which might work for you. It won't work for me because I want everything to be constrained locally. For you, you might not want that. You might want it to always be sort of on the world Y. I want the local Y. So vertex position, and we'll just not a float, sorry. Oh, we will want a float eventually, but for now we'll just use add, and now we'll use a float. And for this one, we'll actually just call this slice or teleport or anything. This will be the thing that kind of controls the slice amount. So we'll put that on the Y, and we'll turn this into a slider. For now, we'll say like -20 to 20 because for you it might be different. We want to later on work out our range, and then we can change the slider based on that. But for now, just kind of do this, and you can already see kind of what's happening in the preview. And so if we make this into a property, and in fact, let me just pop down another register, and we'll call this one Y gradient, and we'll just hook that into there. So if we do get Y gradient, and for now I'm going to stick it into debug. This one won't go into the emission. Sorry, the noise won't go into the emission. The noise will eventually connect to other bits, but for now we'll just plug this one into debug, so it is the only thing that shows up, and we'll hit apply. So now my teleportation, hopefully, yeah, you can kind of see something's a bit strange, you may have noticed. And I was talking before about how I always want it to go from like the head to the toe or the toe to the head, and right now it's not doing that. It's actually coming from the back to the front, and that's because this character, which is from the Unity standard assets, it has a rotation of 90 by default on either the X, Y, or Z, I don't know, whatever. So if I were to bring in, let's say, sphere, and there it is, and put this teleportation shader on it, it behaves correctly for this object because it doesn't have that rotation, which is good. This is the result that I want from top to bottom. And one way you can fix that in Amplify Shader Editor, at least, is to use an object to world node, and then we'll put that in between these two. So before we were using the Y to go into add because we wanted it on the Y axis, but of course this is the local Y axis, which for this character is from the back to the front. So what we're going to do is actually feed the XYZ of everything, so the character's local everything, and object to world output will be the Y. and then we'll hit apply, and hopefully this works. Okay, already I can see that it is working. So pretty cool. Except we don't have the ability to reverse it yet. So it's only going from top to bottom. So if we want to reverse it, what we can do is basically just divide this value, and we're going to be doing 2 sliders for this. No, sorry, just one slider. 2 values, like one on the negative, one on the positive. Again, it's the same with the teleport, where we have these sort of large ranges. We want the same for this one for now, so we'll put in this float and we'll call it range for now. This will change later, so it's okay. And we'll say again, you know, minus 10 to 10, something like that. And should, if we can see it in the preview, it's not working in the preview, but in theory it should be working. I might need to let's use a saturate node maybe. I think you can also use an add, but saturate will do the job. Okay, looks like it's working, but my values are too small. And for you, depending on the scale of your character, I think at least it might be different, or maybe because we're using vertex position, it would be the exact same. I'm not too sure. Don't quote me on that. So let's just see if this works anyway. So it goes down, and then let's see if we can reverse it. Yep. So now it goes from the feet up, and then if this, because this is in a minus value, so if we put it into a positive value, it will come from the top down. So pretty cool. So far everything is working, which is a little treat. So let's give this one, and we'll just call this one the Y gradient. And yeah, from here you basically have 2 options, maybe 3. You can either do the sort of the mixing of the emission, so we kind of combine that gradient with this noise we just made, so where the teleport range sort of comes down, instead of this being sort of black and white, it's showing our sort of animated noise mask. Or you can go and work on the opacity sort of clip off, and I think I'm going to choose option B. We're going to be doing the opacity mask, so for now we can take this out of debug. We don't need it, but we do need it to make our opacity, so let's just put this over here. And we're going to be using a 1- for this, because we basically want the cutoff to be the reverse of this. If you can imagine where the sort of teleportation effect is kind of coming down, in this case it would be kind of coming up, so we want the 1- to be where it's black now, it would be white, and that would be the bit that gets cut off. Not sure if this makes any sense. It'll make sense in a minute, maybe, possibly. If it doesn't, let me know. And we're going to multiply this by our noise, which we can do rather than having to drag all this down. We can just get another one of these. So I've just pressed the G key to use the get local variable, and we're going to be using our noise. So we're going to multiply these 2 together, and if we just like chuck this straight into debug. In fact, let me just do the same thing again. I'll register a local variable, call it opacity mask, and then we will get opacity mask, and we'll put that into debug. You don't have to use the registers and gets. You can just hook these things straight in there, but they are one of my favorite things to use in node-based editors. So now that I know how to do it, thanks to the guys over at Amplify, I will be using them a lot. So let's supply this and see what our current mask would do if it was hooked into opacity. Okay, interesting. And so from here, the white bits would be removed and the black bits would stay where they are. So this is kind of the opposite of what we want to happen. And a way that we can sort of easily demonstrate that actually is, instead of putting that now, we'll actually put this into the opacity mask. And for the emission, we'll change this so it's not using the noise. We'll get our Y gradient so we can sort of get a better look at what's happening. Okay, everything's disappeared. That's good. Okay, so here we go. Now you can see what happens, and you can see that we have some problems. That when the character is fully visible, we're still getting the opacity mask clipping through, which makes sense because that's exactly what we've just told this shader to do. But still, progress for sure. So what we definitely want to be doing here, and I might need some more space, so let me just give myself some space. If you have a bunch of nodes already commented, if you hold the Alt key and just left click and hold anywhere sort of in here, you can move the whole thing around, which is pretty handy. You know, it saves you having to try and click and drag this top bar. You can just do it anywhere. So neato. So okay, we have this, and we know that we want to subtract something because again, when the character is fully visible, we can still see our mask, which is not what we want. So we're going to be doing another get, and in fact I don't need to make a new one, I can just copy paste, because we want our Y gradient, and we're going to multiply this, and from here let's give it a value of 1 for now. Might change this in a bit, and we will subtract this stuff, and let's try and tidy this up a little bit. So that's going to go over there, and we're going to subtract these two results, and if we increase 1 should be fine, I imagine. And let's hook this into that and see what happens. It's still not going to be right, but if you're new to sort of creating shaders, it makes sense to kind of preview what you're doing in sort of little steps, so you can kind of see what's happening, what it's doing to the model. So from what this is doing, it's kind of, it looks like it's the same, I guess. It's pretty cool though. So yeah, if we decrease the range to something tiny, it will kind of do this really close clip, which you might like, or just increase the range so that the sort of teleport effect comes over the entire body before it starts to actually away. But anyway, let's actually finish this and get it right. So let's do another 1 minus here, and we're going to add these two together from this point. So a little bit stronger, and hopefully it's strong enough so that when the character is fully visible, we're not going to get any of these clips, but we'll see. We might need to just chuck in like a saturate or increase sort of the add value or something. Essentially, we're just trying to increase the value of our white. But no, it seems to have done it. So he's visible, and then boom. Pretty cool. But yeah. So the only thing we kind of need to do now is with the gradient that's coming down, we want it to have the noise animating, sort of coming down it. So where this is white, we should be seeing sort of this sort of noise kind of thing happening over the top of your model. And so that is what we will move on to next, but that is going to have to be in another part, I'm afraid, because I'm no good with time management, apparently. But before we go, let me just tidy this up a teeny weeny bit. So do this, opacity mask. And if I've gone through this sort of too quickly, or I haven't explained sort of why we were doing things, like why I was trying to increase the power of this white, let me know in the comments, and I'll try to sort of explain it a bit better, I suppose. You know, why we were kind of subtracting things and whatnot. I can understand how it would be a bit confusing, but my advice to anyone who's sort of learning how to do this is just keep playing around with things. It's essentially just a numbers game, really. You've got adds, multiplies, subtracts, divides, and then these nodes like 1 minus or a negate, if Shader Forge has that. It does have a negate, yeah, which essentially, you know, reverses the order of things. And just kind of, you know, keep playing. So yeah, that's it for this part. In the next part, we will cover the actual emission mask, so that we're not just seeing this boring flat gradient come down. And we will also cover the vertex offsets. Yeah, so that's it for now. I will see you in part 2. I hope this was of some use. I hope it's helped. A lot of the methods that we're using here can be used in just a multitude of things. This isn't, you know, a strict sort of teleportation shader. These types of nodes, like this kind of setup, you'll find yourself using the very similar things a lot. So yeah, just try to focus on what things are doing rather than, you know, that specific end result. This might be a teleportation shader, but ultimately it's teaching you what's what. And the best way to do that is just, you know, keep playing with things yourself, as I was saying. I'm rambling on. Oh my god, Jesus. Okay, goodbye.